History will tell us about the guy and his ancestor that, fighting side by side, they were able to greatly improve their level. Become stronger no matter what, this approach was the main principle of Soho's life. But no matter what the main character did, he could not advance beyond the B class. This was the limit. Trying to overcome the limits, the young man fought with dangerous opponents, hoping that this time everything would be different. However, some things remained the same. Despite the efforts, the giant reptile proved it. The battle with her turned out to be too serious a test for which Soho was not yet ready. A long time ago, this monster, as if that titan ate the main character's mother, making him feel helpless. Then the boy managed to survive, but he could not forget the meeting with the monster for a second. Soho made a promise to himself that he would definitely become stronger, and then he would hit this reptile with a meteor. The woman did everything to keep her child safe, but she was unable to cope on her own. Often those around him reminded Soho of how weak and pitiful he was. The young man understood this very well himself. Even if you put your whole life into improvement and training, you won't even be able to reach the next grade. But even if the circumstances were against the guy, accepting his fate so easily would be a betrayal. Perhaps the desire to go to the end is the only thing that distinguished the main character from the rest of the people in this world. Despite the burden on him, regardless of his condition, continuing was the only choice. The monster was simply incredible in size. Its jaw could easily crush an entire house or even several of them. But even so, Soho did everything possible to at least inflict a wound on the enemy of his fate. In his hands was an ordinary bastard sword. No special shape or abilities, just a reflection of his own powers. The condition was critical. There was barely enough strength to make the last push before seeing the game over. Using everything that was left, the main character struck the dense scales of the monster. But before the young man had time to understand what exactly happened, he was already flying back at great speed. The lizard definitely felt the boy's determination. His blow, although not fatal, did cause harm. A few moments later, the monster began to scream with all its might. The wound left behind caused several debuffs. It was no longer possible to raise his hand, so the boy decided to go a different route. The blade was in the creature's protective layer all this time, so Soho ran and jumped on top of it. With every second, it became clear that the harm caused to the monster greatly worried him and could put an end to the battle. The young man landed successfully. He needed to make at least one more attack to complete the movement. Soho had no more strength left in his hands. It was difficult to clench his fist even for a moment. Then he remembered Roronoa Zoro. It was not easy to fight this way, but there were no other alternatives now. The crocodile's eyes reflected the confidence and intensity of the young man, and it became increasingly clear who would remain the winner. This was the last trick up the protagonist's sleeve. If everything worked out, then he would actually pull it off. Flames and light engulfed the monster from all sides. Soho's actions definitely had an effect. The monster's health was falling. Flashes of rage filled the space like smoke, and at the same time became the road to victory. The blow was not so strong, but more was not required. Thanks to the efforts made, the guy was able to survive. The monster ended up on the ground, but Soho himself could not hold on, as if Naruto and Sasuke were enemies lying not far from each other. Gradually, the aura of the battle began to fade. The light-colored smoke, as well as the dust that had risen into the air, disappeared. The main character himself was on the edge. His health points reached the red mark. Even moving was dangerous. The fight turned out to be not only very difficult, but also long-lasting, moonlight and shadow from the trees. That's all the guy saw. The endless darkness above indicated that the young man could finally rest a little on his journey. The crocodile was defeated. The parents were avenged. But what should Soho now do in life? What should he strive for? The guy himself did not know the answer to this question. The trials that befell him were finally overcome. A little earlier, the protagonist's instructor told the class about the dangers that await them beyond the gates. The man asked whether the students had heard the latest news about humanoid monsters that had appeared recently. The guys didn't know much, but many had heard that such creatures steal people's mana and kill them. Therefore, the mentor asked the students to be careful. It is advisable to move in groups and retreat if something happens. The instructor also emphasized that Jin Seoho, who often does stupid things, remember this. Moreover, among all of them, he was the weakest. The mentor hoped that the guy would not be offended by this attitude. Not wanting to stop, the man continued to tease the guy, pointedly talking about how good he was. The jokes were not funny. They also significantly angered the main character. He wanted to show off Vorg's white fang. He didn't understand why it all ended this way. Wherever the guy went, trouble always followed him. In the past, Seoho entered an elite academy with the highest score. Many congratulated him, but the young man himself did not care. Success and the opinions of others made Soho think that he had some kind of talent. However, the reality turned out to be more cruel. Reaching the top and gaining recognition was not possible for the young man. Even though the guy gave his best several times more than his friends, he failed to achieve more B rank. While everyone moved forward, conquering new levels and not understanding the young man's problem, his condition gradually worsened. Then Soho realized that miracles only happen in fairy tales, and someone above him screamed very loudly. Thoughts that progress was simply too slow gave hope, but they were quickly dashed by the cruel truth. Some were worried that the main character would become a liability to their squad, since he was so weak. True, the young man didn't care about other people's opinions. Now the goal he was pursuing had some significance. Despite his limits, the main character was obsessed with dungeon crawling and grinding. Whether this was caused by a desire for revenge or disagreement with those who set boundaries for the guy, it was difficult to answer. The only thing that remained constant was the need for a harsh grind, even more difficult than the grind in Korean MMOs. Every time he passed through the gate, Soho felt an unusual feeling. It was not déjà vu, but rather a pleasant nostalgia. The world in which the main character lives is quite cruel. Surviving in it is not an easy task. The dungeons only prove this. Soho was the very last to enter the mutated gate. He always trailed behind the rest of the main group. But to his surprise, this red-lit world greeted him with the loss of almost all of his classmates. The chance of disaster was only 0.002%. But even so, hardly anyone managed to survive the attack of the monsters. The main character wanted to come to the rescue of one of the few who remained conscious, but noticed the instructor. The man's condition left much to be desired, and he asked Soho to help him. However, the guy's eyes looked only at the monster who had seen all this mess, that same crocodile. The monster seemed even larger than at their first unwanted meeting. Its strength was beyond limits. Standing in front of the culprit of his misfortune, the main character experienced different feelings. Most of all, the desire for revenge called out to him. There was no point in holding back his emotions anymore, and even if the young man wanted to, it would not have been possible to do so. Almost immediately, Soho materialized a sword in his hand, the same one with which he would soon defeat this enemy. He was ready to challenge the one who deprived him of everything and forced him to move forward. The guy had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. After the battle, there was practically no strength left. Soho raised his head and looked at the monster. But apart from misunderstanding, the main character felt nothing. Revenge will not bring back his parents, and there is nothing to be happy about. The last drops of strength went beyond the horizon of the young man's life. He thought about what could have happened if he had been stronger. Soho's body was engulfed in a greenish flame. It enveloped almost the entire body, leaving no gaps. The ancient entity awoke from its slumber and was disappointed by the power of its descendant. The thickening fog only became darker, and the voice that sounded a moment ago disappeared. Gradually, the energy began to accumulate in the form of a black circle. The guy's body underwent some changes. The demon behind this was previously a member of the boy's family, but that was many decades ago. Even though Soho has now disappointed the powerful being, it was still difficult to solve this problem somehow. A few moments later, the main character woke up. He did not expect to return to consciousness, so he was very surprised. He jumped up abruptly as if he was planning to sleep, but then he noticed that we had a new video out. The place where the young man found himself was not similar to where he had previously fought with the crocodile. Behind the main character was a suspicious person, silently watching him. The guy asked if he had died. Then the blonde behind him denied this assumption, explaining that the young man was still alive. The stranger's attire was strange for their time, and besides, his appearance and tone made it clear that he was strong. No matter how many options Soho tried, he could not find an explanation for this, so he asked about it directly. Then the demon laughed and was amazed at such impudence. Apparently, it went away along with all the health points. The blonde was surprised that the main character had no idea who exactly was in front of him. Having repeated his question, the young man found himself in a slightly difficult position. He did not even see the stranger's movements. Then the blonde finally decided to give an answer. He was a heavenly demon. At least that's what they called him. The protagonist of the story was the only heir to this strange creature that exuded pure power. It was hard to believe. Soho did not immediately understand what was happening, not only because of fatigue but also because of unreality. The heavenly demon was quite famous in the modern world. They even talked about it in classes. He was rightly called the strongest creature of this world, or the one who lives and hunts the heavens. There was only one nuance. This character was a fictional hero of a famous novel. It was hard to believe that someone like him was a real creature of flesh and blood, but there was no point in denying what he saw. In front of him was definitely an unfamiliar and very strong person. Then the heavenly demon tried to explain. In the world of the protagonist, his ancestor is considered a myth. There were many reasons for this. No one wanted there to be ready-made guys who would like to follow his path, but there could be no doubt. Soho was the heir of this creature, and besides, it could hear the thoughts of other people without noticing any particular difficulty in this. The evil aura emanating in all directions could not go unnoticed. Any intelligent creature would immediately run away. Then the main character asked why he was brought here, but the heavenly demon only began to laugh. The guy's cost was so low that it hardly made any sense for such a great magician. The place where Soho found himself was the hunting grounds of the heavenly demon. He wanted to find and crush his only enemy, a bloody demon that has been preventing the protagonist's ancestor from implementing any plan for an incredibly long time. Now the heavenly demon was greatly weakened due to its enemy. It was difficult to control the world and search for an enemy. To solve the problem, it was necessary to find a suitable physical body. This would significantly increase the man's strength. After thinking a little, the green-eyed man realized that in front of him was an almost perfect vessel that would definitely not reject him. The ancestor's reaction frightened the protagonist a little, because from the demon's face one could understand the insidiousness of his plans. A few seconds later, the being of the celestial order said that the guy's body could be quite useful, and then he persistently asked me to share such a wonderful container for the soul with him. The main character was very scared, but giving his body to a stranger or indeed anyone was not in his plans. After receiving the body, the heavenly demon would be able to return to Earth, and Soho should be happy to do such an honor. The guy immediately threw back the man's hand, refusing the offer. Then the demon's aura began to become active. Pressure and negative emotions began to affect Soho's aura in waves. Even with limited powers, the demon was strong. The Supreme Being was unhappy that his ancestor did not remember his place in this hierarchy. Initially, the green-eyed man did not plan to resort to such a thing, but the protagonist's answer left him no choice. Slowly approaching the boy, the heavenly demon was very surprised at what awaited him. Even though Soho was a member of the B class, he could withstand the powers of a higher being without losing himself. The main character was well aware of how strong the negative energy was affecting him, but he was not afraid. Before the Manhwa, the young man did not understand what exactly happened, but he was glad that nothing had worked out for his distant relative. Then the heavenly demon remembered that something happened a long time ago, and it was because of this that he found himself in this position. He promised a loved one that he would never harm those who carried his blood. Promises in this world are much more powerful than is generally believed. They are not something that can simply be ignored. This memory often crossed the mind of the heavenly demon, but he did not seem to be happy about it. Realizing that there were not many chances, the ancestor asked what the name of the daring boy was. Before the guy could answer, the sky demon already knew him. It was cooler than Pakunoda's power. Even though Jin Soho was ignorant, now the Supreme Being will make him the offer of a lifetime. However, without even listening to the end, the stubborn guy immediately refused, not intending to hang out with someone like a demon. Then the insidious green-eyed blonde reminded the guy of how exactly he suffered due to lack of strength. The demon was sure. For this, he didn't even need to read thoughts. The main character wanted more power and hoped that it would help him. Raising unpleasant memories from the bottom, the man called his descendant a naive and weak child. Mind-reading and this whole monologue made Soho quite angry. He insisted that the demon stop. A little later, the blonde laughed at the top of his lungs, realizing that the young man was angry, unable to do anything. He continued speaking, explaining that those who were unable to overcome their limit could only resort to denial. The heavenly demon also recalled how many times Soho tried to change things, but his efforts were useless. Words about how low the limit of the guy's abilities infuriated him. He was able to restrain his anger less and less. Then, not wanting to miss the chance, the Supreme Being offered to help pass these power limits. This really interested the main character. The ancestor continued, all because of the training methods of this world. Almost nothing that Soho did for days on end could advance the power of the demon blood heir. However, there was a way to achieve something more. It was necessary to comprehend martial arts. It is from them that their family draws strength. In their world, nothing is stronger than the style of the heavenly demon, which only the man himself knows. Hope lit up in the guy's eyes. He would finally have the opportunity to become stronger. The greatest techniques can make someone stronger. The demon continued to lure his heir into a trap. And due to the fact that Soho has demonic blood, it will not be difficult to master them. You just need to transfer the body. Remembering the moments in his life that had still pushed the guy forward, he thought about the proposal. Even though the main character really wanted to gain powers, he didn't want to become the new Yuji Itadori. Then the heavenly demon accepted the position of heir, saying that he would prepare certain tests for him. If Soho copes and can pass them, then the ancestor will teach all the knowledge just like that. In exchange, in case of failure, the body of the young man will go to the heavenly demon. The deal was quite profitable. Logic said that the only correct answer was refusal, but the desire to gain power was too strong. Soho didn't know what the test would be. This increased the risk, but suddenly this was the last chance. In addition, it was obvious that the demon would not sit idly by. He would probably do everything so that the guy would lose. Trying to analyze sensibly, the main character for a long time could not decide whether to accept a deal with the devil. Then the guy asked the man if he promised to keep his word. The blonde confirmed this because his name was at stake. Having gone beyond death itself and having learned the most hidden secrets of the world, there was no point in lying. The main character accepted the offer, and then asked what exactly the guy's test would be. The demon asked the boy to come closer to him so that they could start this quick test. As soon as the Supreme Being used the ability, So-ho was transported to another dimension. It was not immediately clear where exactly the man had thrown the main character, but everything seemed too familiar. A picture of the very day when he lost his parents appeared before the eyes of the matured So-ho. Being on the verge, the young man's mother continued to console him and support him, doing everything to save the child. She hid her child before going to divert attention to herself. So-ho will have to be found by other people. The main character's condition became very unstable. The mob's instability percentage meter filled up very quickly. The child asked his mother not to leave him, but the woman had no choice but to hide the boy. However, the woman could not do otherwise because her main task was to protect her little son. Even now, this memory evokes strong negative emotions in the main character. It is difficult to describe them in words. The death of her mother causes horror and fear in So-ho even now, after many years of painful training. If the main character had died in that attack, he wouldn't have to feel so weak. The picture changed to another, the day when the young man learned about the ceiling that he could not cross. Looking at himself from the outside, the main character only became more convinced that he was pathetic. People around who had previously supported the guy sharply turned against him, disappointed with this result. It was obvious to everyone that So-ho, although showing promise, had reached his limits too early. But even when faced with something that was beyond the young man's strength, he did not back down, continuing to try and strive. The protagonist's anger continued to increase. He wanted it to stop quickly. Having spent all the time that he can remember training, it turned out to be impossible to achieve the desired result. This became especially clear after meeting the crocodile. It was incredibly difficult to defeat him, and the memories that appeared in the mind at the sight of a monster caused additional damage of a different type. The heavenly demon told the young man to give his heart to rage because the power that he would soon receive would help him crush any enemy. With a sword in hand or even bare hands, no one else will stand in the way of So-ho before his goal. Whispering in his ear, the ancestor pushed the young man forward along the crooked path. This parody of Eren Yeager made the task much more difficult. Gradually losing himself in the subconscious, So-ho met his mother. She called him by name. She wanted to know why he was so weak that he could not protect her. Why then he allowed the woman to simply leave. The mother figure wondered why, even after so much time, all So-ho could do was run. The heavenly demon was interested in watching this. The fluctuations in the guy's consciousness made him revel in his power. He hurried the main character, inviting him to succumb to oblivion and cease to exist as a separate person. So-ho slowly walked up to his mother. He looked tired. The wound on his hand hurt, and even lifting the blade was not easy. However, the young man's ancestor did not take into account the fact that absolutely no one could break So-ho's will. Therefore, the boy, without any doubt, cut through the illusion that had captivated his consciousness for so painfully long. A little later, the main character noted that even though the power of the heavenly demon was enormous, the fake he made did not look like the original. The young man's mother would never blame him for anything, but on the contrary, she was glad that she managed to save the boy. Breaking this artificial world turned out to be much easier than originally expected. Before moving on to the training, the main character noted that playing with other people's memories and emotions is terrible. Since So-ho passed the test, he wanted to quickly learn the martial art of the white demon and finally overcome the limit. Previously, no one had managed to pass the challenge. The blonde couldn't believe what happened. Even though the main character was a weakling, his aura, unlike his ancestor, was persistent, kind, and pure. Such changes greatly interested the green-eyed man, so he accepted the young man's request and agreed to show his style. The main character wanted to hurry up and quickly master new abilities, then he would definitely become better. But the heavenly demon did not want to rush, talking about the method of transferring energy. In any case, the blonde will end up in the guy's physical body. Two souls will coexist together. However, since the man lost, he will not take control of the body, taking it only at the request of So-ho himself. I didn't really want to believe the words of the heavenly demon. After all, he was quite slippery and rough. The only exact fact that the guy knew was that the man standing in front of him was incredibly strong. The young man accepted the offer, but warned the new soul that he would expel him if the green-eyed man tried to do something stupid. This suited the ancestor quite well. The main character understood that a man could not just get a body. Otherwise, he would not have had to do something like this. The man began the ritual, transferring his power to So-ho. The heavenly demon turned into green energy, and as if air entered the guy's body. The sensations from his own body were strange. So-ho did not understand what was happening, but he really gained strength. The ancestor asked the main character not to forget what honor he received, but more on that later. After all, right now they found themselves in a bit of a difficult situation. Apparently a storm was starting. A blade flew towards So-ho at high speed. He managed to dodge, but it was not easy. The blade entered the dense soil like a knife into butter. This greatly surprised the main character. The evil version of Kurama promised to share his power this time, but only once. The Supreme Being primarily pursued his own goals, so he wanted the young man to deal with the followers of the blood cult. Many warriors with cracked faces attacked Seoho. It seemed like they were the ones who had sided with the demon's arch-enemy. Previously, the main character fought with people only in training, so he never had the opportunity to fight seriously. The heavenly demon ordered to disconnect them all, giving more and more of his energy to get what he wanted. The guy's hand began to move without his desire. It looks like it won't be easy to restrain someone so strong. The enemy was neutralized in just an instant, even if it was done by the heavenly demon, but by the hands of Seoho. The ancestor was interested in whether the young man appreciated how incredible the power he had received. Nevertheless, the demon kept his promise. The system said that the main character's body had moved forward in the stage. Additional abilities had been obtained. Using the new energy, it was not difficult to cope with a dozen mediocre warriors. Remembering his sword lessons, the guy put the cursed energy into one blow, which was very effective. The main character was amazed at how easy it was to fight. Then the heavenly demon mentioned that this was only a small part. The stronger the connection between the spirit and Seoho, the more of this incredible power the guy will be able to use. The young man decided to take the battle seriously. He decided to start with the enemies that were right in front of him. Having opened the console, the boy decided to use the Ice Spear spell. It froze the target or destroyed it if it was already ice. Casting spells was also significantly faster. The possibilities for combat were endless if all spells became faster. Every second, the young man defeated several ragas. With a sword or magic, he was an experienced warrior, but earlier he would not have been able to cope. Most of the spells available to Seoho were related to the element of ice, so in addition to the spear, the young man could freeze everyone. By combining skills, the main character was able to quickly finish the first task from his new partner. Green energy and ice magic were effective in combination, but also destroyed everything individually. But even having acquired new abilities, it was not possible to completely avoid all wounds despite full concentration. The heavenly demon reasoned about what would happen when power over the body passed to him. True, now the question was more complicated. Even though Seoho's strength had grown, there were too many enemies for a beginner. It would be too stupid to die in the first battle, so the demon decided to provide a little support. The main character planned to refuse help, but the heavenly demon had too much power over the body. As soon as the man was told to let go of the sword, Seoho reluctantly complied with the request. It seems that he underestimated his ancestor. He was worried about what exactly his partner was planning, because they had thrown their only weapon in front of a crowd of enemies. The situation was quite dangerous. The followers of the blood cult were not going to miss such a convenient opportunity. Then, somewhere in the depths of Seoho's consciousness, someone's words were heard. It was a spell, gradually revealing its power. The energy of the heavenly demon increasingly covered the young man's body before the blonde himself was able to apply the technique of his art. There were at least 30 warriors around the guy. All of them surrounded him and were ready to attack at the same time. However, as soon as the heavenly demon took just one step, the situation of the battle changed greatly. The raging energy was more like an unstoppable storm that chased the opponents. The blonde especially liked this technique, because all that was required to win was just to go forward towards your enemy. Hanami was defeated in much the same way. This aura can literally push you into a wall or floor. The enemies affected by the technique turned into dust. It happened so quickly that Seoho didn't even understand anything. Having regained control of his body, the main character could not believe that he had done all this. Then the heavenly demon intervened, telling the guy not to flatter himself. He didn't have enough strength for that. Suddenly, the strength in the young man's body began to disappear, as if someone was pumping out all his mana in liters. When Seoho's eyes were already closing, he realized that in the end he was simply fooled. The mysterious smile of the heavenly demon did not give any answers, but on the contrary added many new ones. Meanwhile, the system absorbed the power of all the defeated blood ghosts. This time, they defeated 124 opponents. All the energy collected during the battle will be cultivated and used to enhance the heavenly demon's martial arts. The main character woke up in a different place. He was lying in bed at home. His body was fine. He jumped up sharply, and his partner was glad that the young man's eyes had finally opened, because the blonde was already tired of waiting. The guy was amazed that his body was not stolen, but the ghost of the demon was a little angry, because he gave his word. But the main character said that he considered the man to be a person who does not keep his word. Seoho was on guard after that incident. He understood that deals with the heavenly demon are an Abayudo sharp sword. Then the young man decided to clarify whether he could use this power due to the fact that his partner had temporarily gained control. But the ancestor did not understand why the guy needed this information, although if the answer was yes, perhaps Seoho would want to give the body. Having received a negative answer, the demon decided to ask if the guy liked using something so cool. Even though I didn't want to admit it at all, the strength was truly incredible. The main character was sure that he had never seen anything better in his entire life. Then the blonde said that it was not even 50%. They had a long road, probably no one would give up the body, so the ancestor introduced himself. His name was Janhu. The young man did not care who he was, because as long as this power was within his reach, it would not be difficult to avenge his parents. Getting out of bed, Soho asked his partner whether cultivation occurs by killing opponents from the blood cult. The heir's intelligence pleased Janhu, but he did not stop asking to give him control. But the main character said that the demon can only dream about it because it will never happen. Having removed all the sensors that were placed on his body, the young man planned to leave the hospital before discharge. The heavenly demon was interested to see what would grow out of the one who inherited not only his blood, but also his strength. Seoho probably wouldn't be able to live happily ever after, he understood that, but now he can become stronger. However, in general, everything remained the same. The guy did not plan to give up Janhu's body. While the guy was thinking about what exactly his next step should be, a man entered the room. The main character quickly recognized the guest, but was surprised to see her at that moment in such a place. The girl was no less surprised because the doctor said that the guy was practically dead, but now he is so playful. While the young man was meeting his girlfriend, work was in full swing in the government building, and there were many problems that needed solving. The incident with the mutated gate from which only Soho came out, this caused a lot of problems. The department was trying to contain information, preventing panic and outrage from ordinary people. This situation was not isolated. This was the 8th incident with the main character. The employees were thinking about what their superiors would do. While the guy with the disheveled hair was thinking about how to handle everything, his colleague was trying to imagine how this news would be covered in the news. The situation was not new, but the monster that appeared was more terrible than usual, and there was also a survivor. The guys knew Soho. This was unusual, because in the previous 7 incidents there was not a single survivor. Once upon a time, the main character defeated this man in a tournament, so he knew the guy very well. That time, the guy became the best student at the academy, clearly demonstrating his skills, knowledge, and endurance. It was amazing, as if the guy was somehow interested in this world. So much happens in his life. However, these workers did not yet know that the guy was on the verge of becoming the second Kenjaku. They suggested an option in which the guy had some kind of trick, but the colleague asked to be more realistic and returned to work. Huiseok's department has been working very inefficiently lately, so Mr. Tousled Hair decided to give advice to his friend. The guy's character was quite nasty, and besides, he never liked to hide his thoughts. This was especially evident in moments when the name of the main character came up. In these cases, the guy began to behave strangely. He was really surprised, not even realizing that Seoho still went to dungeons. At the same time, the guy remembered the girl who came to visit him. Her name was Chi-Si Young. She was very surprised to learn that the boy still remembered her name. In what sense it was an honor. The main character had nothing to answer, so he advised his friend to hurry up and go home. However, Chi-Si Young herself had a few words for the guy. She wanted to give him friendly advice. The girl insisted for a long time that Soho should stop being a hunter. He had no abilities. But the main character himself always asked to stop persuading him, even despite all the situations he had experienced. He didn't want anyone to try to interfere in his life, but Chi-Si Young said she was just voicing the facts. The girl was unhappy. She didn't want him to die when he realized that he shouldn't go to the dungeons. However, like a typical protagonist, our Seoho didn't understand this bunny girl's feelings at all, so he insisted on her leaving again. It was not easy for her friend to come to terms with this, because many hunters die on forays, and she did not want to lose him. Chi-Si Young decided to leave since the main character wanted it so much. She was quite fierce. A few moments later, Janhu appeared, curious to know who it was. However, the guy didn't plan to lash out in front of his ancestor. This greatly angered the spirit, and he wanted to unleash a ghostly uppercut. Going out into the street, the girl's mood made itself felt. She was a little depressed. The driver was already waiting for her in the car. He asked if Chi-Si Young had a chance to talk, but alas, the attempt was unsuccessful. Then the man suggested speaking more openly. Guys often don't notice when people worry about them, but the beauty understood that it is almost impossible to change. Soho now, all his actions are aimed at only one thing. They went home. The next raid was planned for the next morning. To become stronger, the main character began to diligently cultivate energy under the watchful supervision of a mentor. While meditating, Seoho released much more power than he had released the first time during the battle. An ordinary person would not notice the difference, but to a skilled warrior it would be obvious that the density of the spiritual aura was extremely high. Seoho slowly but surely mastered the techniques of the heavenly demon art until his ancestor stopped joking and making fun of him. However, in reality, he was terribly shocked. The guy's learning speed was incredibly high. If the guy achieves the same degree of mastery in this art, he will be much stronger than Janhu himself. The next day, the guy went to the lower rank gate where novice hunters usually practice. The strange thing was that one of the enemies of the main character and his partner, someone from the bloody demon sect, was transported into this space. The guys were exactly like Rick and Morty planned to go on an adventure. They didn't care about the enemy's motives. These two pursued their goals along the same road. They are only tools for each other. There were many people in the dungeon, but before going inside, the young man had to confirm his identity. Jin Seo-ho introduced himself and said that he was B rank, which surprised many because he was too skilled. The employee clarified whether the main character understands how much higher he is than this dungeon, because it is rank F. Then Seo-ho explained that he had personal reasons for going there, and he was also wondering if it was a problem. But on the contrary, it was good because this way the guys without experience would be much calmer. A skilled hunter is always useful. The participants quickly recognized their new teammate as the nationally known Jin Seo-ho. They did not understand what he needed here. According to rumors, the guy was very skillful, even if he did not manage to pass the line, but he was called to work in all corners of the world. Continuing to whisper rumors to each other, the newcomers hoped that the main character would not hear them. The raid was too easy for him, so one of the people suggested that he wanted to stroke his vanity. The path the young man chose was quite difficult. He also had simpler options, although in any case, life was unfair to him. There was very little time left before departure. Many neophytes were enjoying their first experience in the dungeons. One Soho stood aside and silently watched everyone having fun and chatting. Soho's first trip to the dungeon was the same, although at that time he was more like Ikari Shinji. Naive, cowardly, and weak, he was pushed forward by confidence in victory and the desire to become stronger. Janhu hated his heir because he was too fixated on his bygone glory. But the main character recalled that they had previously agreed with the ancestor not to read minds. It was dishonest. True, the heavenly demon did not understand the heir, because now having such power he still clings to the past. The main character had nothing to say about this. He planned to simply ignore his relative, but they turned to him. A girl approached Soho. He could not understand what exactly the newcomers needed from him. The novice hunter's embarrassment was noticeable to the naked eye. She asked Soho for an autograph. The guy couldn't believe it because no one had ever asked for his autograph before. Everyone knew Soho as a lazy guy with a superior attitude, although little did they know how difficult it was to reach those heights. While the young man was distracted by the words of other weaklings, his fan was worried that she was not good enough to get an autograph. Due to the fact that the brown-haired woman was very embarrassed, the main character could not understand her correctly. She told a little about herself. Seo-ho once cleared the dungeon and thereby saved her life, so now she imitates him. These words took the boy by surprise. It was difficult to react correctly to such cases. He was surprised that someone like him could save another person's life. He was probably too hard on himself. Seo-ho gave the paper to the girl and promised to sign her autograph later when they finished cleaning up. Of course, if the fan does not change her mind during the passage before the end of their outing. It seems that even this reaction from the guy caused her a great surge of joy. The main character did not get along well with girls. He was quite popular, but he could never understand what they were thinking. This is the first time someone has reacted to him this way. Seo-ho's entire life he considered himself incompetent. The main character turned to Janhu. The ancestor had previously said that only a hunter of rank A and above could cope with the ghost of blood. The blonde confirmed his words, but also added that in the dungeons there are much more dangers above level A. The strongest in the group of adventurers was C rank. Apart from the main character, they had no chance. Janhu confirmed Sohuo's worries. If he refused to go, all the students would probably die. The guy didn't plan to give up his principles or run away, so he materialized a sword and was ready to move forward. The seniors led the process. They tried to structure everything, but it was more difficult than working in Excel. Some of the students were stupid or lazy, but in any case, the commander will be a guy with rank C. Kang Bang-chul tried to pretend to be an expert, but his appearance already showed him to be a complete noob. Also, before departure, the employee decided to introduce another special guest of their outing today. After which the woman hurried to introduce everyone to the B-rank hunter, Jin Seo-ho. S-rank came to greet his senpai, and their leader was confident that thanks to the expert, everything would go smoothly. However, the stupid leader Kang Ban planned to rise to a higher rank at the expense of the guy, believing that the young man was too overrated. Janhu was amazed at the stupidity and ignorance of the raid leader, because he was not ready to lead people. The group gradually began to enter the gate. Those whose rank was higher walked ahead. That's how their hierarchy was structured. It was dark ahead, so the neophytes were worried that something might happen to them. Kang Ban tried to calm everyone down. The presenter's words were so stupid, the main character could barely restrain himself from giving the naive guy a survival lesson. The ghost standing behind reasoned that the weakest are always the loudest. Since Kang Bang was in charge, the youth planned to obey his orders. This greatly surprised the C rank. However, he still perceived Soho only as one of the steps to the next rank. He did not even know how unprepared he was for it. The guy's simplicity and naivety amused the main character and his pocket monster Janhu. Then Soho reminded his partner that they agreed not to communicate during forays so as not to attract attention. The spirit himself was willing to rest, but was not sure that the guy would be able to solve the upcoming trials alone. The main character was amazed because his relative was able to find the cult members just by going into the dungeon. Janhu was amused that his heir was asking such simple things. The enemies were right below them. The ground shook, the students were scared, and ghostly blood soldiers began to crawl out from under the floor. Everyone had to return to the normal world as soon as possible, otherwise no one from the group would remain intact. Red energy filled the corridor, moving like thunder from one surface to another. So that the newcomers could retreat, the main character entered the battle without hesitation, although he was a little late. Their naive leader was killed. Only one blow was enough for the C-rank hunter. The heavenly demon was amazed at how cleverly they were tricked, because they were caught from the very beginning. The leader's killer turned out to be the same girl who had previously asked Soho for an autograph. The situation was dire. Apparently, the enemy had taken possession of her body and was now controlling her actions. Winning the battle was not a big problem, but doing it while saving the student's life was a slightly difficult task. The battle began. The protagonist's opponent was quite dexterous. Her strength could also compete with other rank B hunters. Soho ordered the others to run outside the dungeon, otherwise the risk to life was too high. The bloody ghost looked like the demons from Dota. Wide eyes, strange gait, and incredible strength. The guy realized who his enemy was, but the question at what moment remained open. Then Janhu gave the answer. The spirit entered the girl's body only at the moment when they entered this dungeon. In other words, there was an ambush here. The student's real personality couldn't suppress the monster. She was shedding tears, that's the only sign. The main character asked his mentor if he knew anything about this dungeon, but the blonde was upset that he was underestimated. Previously, this dungeon served as one of the prisons for the Blood Demon sect, so there may be many strong enemies here. This place was called the Mirror of Sins and Bad Deeds. It was very popular in the past. Here those who did wrong or evil were turned into monsters, so the effectiveness of the sect did not decrease. A spirit could take over a body only when a person did something bad. This particular girl killed someone. As an exception, Janhu decided to show the crime once to the one who doted on him. Summoning power, the heavenly demon began to pump out some memories from the brown-haired girl's brain. The process was completed quite quickly, and the immersion in the prepared events began. The memories of that situation seemed to be distorted. Their colors were fiery cold and eerie, and an evil aura emanated from them. This girl's crime was to kill her parents, but she did not protect the village. She just wanted to feel it, and after everything was realized, her expression in the mirror seemed incredible to the girl. Returning back, the main character was on tilt, because when such a person thanks you, you are usually just as much of a scoundrel. Janhu immediately warned, Soho, these were not made-up memories. He didn't do it to annoy the guy, it's just the truth. However, the main character did not doubt this, because his feelings screamed that everything happened exactly like that. The boy's mentor whispered in his ear. He didn't need to read his mind to notice Soho's fear and doubt. The man thought so. The girl was to blame for her sin. Now she was the enemy of the main character. There was no point in avoiding blows. The optimal solution to the problem was only one, fast and accurate hit, transferring the game over to the screen. But the student's words earlier, her reaction and experiences could not leave the main character's head. Who would have thought that such a bright person would have such a dark secret behind his back? The forces were too different. The blood ghost did not have a single chance of victory. The main character was still thinking about how he could help. To Janhu's surprise, the guy threw away his sword and slowly began to walk towards the girl. Even though Soho had no reason to save the life of his enemy, he could not leave the one who was begging for salvation. In addition, Janhe himself previously talked about how often the main character runs away from his problems rather than trying to solve them. Also, this itself is relevant to the situation in which the young man finds himself now, so he simply does not violate his principles. Previously, there was no strength to choose a different path, but thanks to a relative and the experience gained, now there is one. Such dedication greatly surprised the heavenly demon, because despite the risks, Soho chose the hard path. Using the power correctly, the main character was able to accelerate his heart. The effect was the same as Luffy's first gear. However, if you can get out of the dungeon in one piece only using the Janhei method, then the guy will be disgraced for the rest of his life. On the other hand, it is better to die for a good cause than to run away and leave a lonely girl in trouble. Even though Soho had not yet fully mastered his power, he could come up with a good plan, although there were no guarantees. The spirit of the relative behind him did not understand what exactly his heir was up to, but he did not like it. After all, if the main character makes a mistake, then not only he will die, but also the heavenly spirit and other students. In addition, Soho was still unable to control large amounts of energy, which meant he didn't have many options. Gradually, the guy began to influence the fan with his aura, trying to defeat only the ghost that captured her. The main character was not going to listen to his mentor. reminding him that this time he would solve the problem on his own. Janhe's surprise knew no bounds, because his heir had already reached the stage of enlightenment. His potential as a body as well as a new holder of the Heavenly Demon title was incredibly high. Having regained her consciousness for a while, the girl asked the idol to run away because he would die. The guy didn't want to be underestimated, and he didn't like the girl's attitude even more. She must want to survive. Stopping and capturing is the young man's first goal. If his opponent constantly moves, he won't be able to pull out the ghost. To stop his opponent's attacks, Soho stopped the ghost's blade with his own hand, and then began to convince her with words. The fan must want to be saved, otherwise everything will be in vain, and his idea will be completely failed. An unexpected flash filled the space. The corridor was covered with an invisible veil obstructing the view. Using his powers, the main character managed to throw the enemy back without causing huge damage. It was too difficult to contain the force in this position, even if the spirit standing against him was of high rank. It was impossible to harm the girl, because her soul and body would not be able to withstand the techniques of the Heavenly Demon. The guy understood that his mentor was absolutely right. The young man was still new to learning this art. But even so, even a weak and inept person like him was capable of some things. Stopping the attacks was relatively simple, but every step in the rescue plan had to be thought out. The girl did not understand why the main character decided to help her, even after seeing the past and her grave sin. Seoho was used to judging things by hearing different opinions. Memories showed the moment, but not what led to it. They will be able to understand this issue only when they free the girl from the influence of the blood ghost. Previously, no one had approached her with such kindness and understanding. She was greatly amazed by the young man's reaction to the situation. The main character's principles did not allow him to judge someone in this position, because otherwise he would have made many mistakes. The battle gradually began to resemble Naruto's battle against pain in concept. Thanks to Janhei's help, the young man was really able to overcome his limits, and he will probably be able to reach level A. But his opponent was not so simple. Even though the girl was a neophyte, the spirit that possessed her skillfully dodged and attacked. Even one missed blow could be fatal, so Soho gathered all his strength. By enhancing the attacks with the techniques of the Heavenly God, the effect was much more expressive. Watching the battle from the shadows, the master was amazed at how deftly he was able to use various techniques without training. It seems that Janhei was truly lucky for his heir to be so capable. But what pleased the demon even more was that one day he would be able to get the guy's body. The protagonist completely imposed his pace, performing strong blows and pushing back the enemy with excellent defense. One thing was clear: it would be possible to save the fan, only this time there would be no more chances. Squeezing the energy in his fist, the young man formed a small compressed sphere from it. This made it possible to take a large amount of energy. Seoho said that you can learn something even from those whom the demon calls non-entities. Now the decisive moment has come, which will determine how this battle will end. A palm strike to the body disrupted the flow of energy in the body. Now it will be easier to implement the remaining stages. After which the guy was able to draw all the power of the bloody demon from the girl's body, practically without damaging the body. The mentor was amazed at Soho's stupidity and courage, because he used the technique in battle, although he had not practiced it before. The guy did not plan to prove his point of view to his relative. He only said that in their times, this is how they survive. After checking the girl's condition, the main character was convinced that she was not in danger. But as soon as the young man relaxed for a second, a terrifying aura began to emanate from the other side. The energy was so terrible that you would have thought they were developing Starfield there. The mentor was very surprised for the umpteenth time, because not everyone can feel such energy. The main character turned to someone who was hiding in the shadows and was in no hurry to show himself. The feeling of the aura increased, but Soho's eyes did not help him see anything. After hesitating only for a moment, the guy noticed a rising red flame a few meters away from him. With every second it flared up more and more, foreshadowing a truly problematic situation. After some time, a man emerged from this hellish pillar. He was surprised to find such a union. Although he noted that the heavenly demon should have turned to his heir much earlier, and not delayed until the last minute. This person's energy was similar to that of the bloody ghosts, but it was on a different level. His presence seemed to make everything around him heavier. He pressed his power on everyone around. Then the heavenly demon himself decided to intervene. It was the same bloody demon about which the mentor spoke so much, the sworn enemy of their kind, and also the one who wreaks a lot of chaos in their modern world. The confrontation between light and dark, the situation looked quite one-sided. Janhei could not use his power to its fullest. Basically, little was known about this creature. The only reliable fact was that people owed it the appearance of the gate. The main character did not understand why the main boss was in a location for noobs. Then the mentor suggested that it was an astral body. The young man was now weaker than the real body, when the original was 10 times superior to this fake. The blood demon was amazed that Jin Seoho was still alive, The main character was surprised that he knew him, but the main enemy only laughed a little. Of course he knows the guy, because he is the only inheritor of the heavenly demon. The Madara cosplayer was now vulnerable, because his body was not full. They might have had a chance. The opportunity for revenge presented itself much earlier than originally planned. Before the main character could ask a question, two powerful creatures clashed in a magical battle. Then Janhei told the young man that it was the bloody demon who was behind the murder of the protagonist's mother. This monster's strength was on another level. Even though it was now very limited, it was not easy to compete with him. However, the heavenly demon continued to give his all, not wanting to die from 1/10 of his main opponent. The words spoken by the mentor struck the guy like lightning. His reaction was expected. It was not easy to believe what I heard, but the information was more than verified. The bloody demon himself was amazed at the stupidity of people. They attribute all misfortunes to coincidences and failure. The demon considered Jin Soho incredibly naive, because even a child could make such a conclusion. The situation gradually began to take a bad turn. Even 10% of strength was enough to defeat a newcomer. The heavenly demon had no reason to interfere in this duel, which means that only death awaits the young man. But to the mentor's surprise, the protagonist's reaction was calm. He understood that he had no chance. The mentor suggested that probably a couple of seconds would be enough for the bloody demon to win. Then the young man suggested that the heavenly demon defeat their main enemy using the guy's body. Unexpected to hear this, Janhei did not immediately give an answer to his heir. This day will definitely be on his list of favorites. Green-Eyed promised to win, because in this case their strength with the bloody demon would be on the same level. However, the showman's words did not mean much to Soho. He wanted confirmation, just as Byakuya wanted to see Ichigo's Bankai. They had no choice. It was unlikely that a powerful enemy would not destroy them at the first opportunity. The bloody demon wanted to prevent the merger. He asked the guy not to do anything stupid because it would not end the way he wanted. However, the heavenly demon was able to incarnate in the material world. The green beam marked a phase change. Outwardly, Soho's body did not change, but his strength and the aura he exuded became many times stronger. The blood demon believed that this would make the original task a little more difficult, but before starting, the sky demon had something he wanted to say. The problem with the leader of a bloody cult is that for someone who is incapable, he thinks too much of himself. Green quickly began to suppress red. The instant strike from Janhei was effective. The very first blow sent the red demon flying several tens of meters. It's scary to think what 100% of them will be like. But still, winning with just one blow is now impossible even for the whitest demon. The mentor didn't like that the bloody demon fell so easily. He should have gotten up faster. The cult leader was upset that his rival did not appreciate the acting skills, although he was tickled. The demon knew very well how to live in the body of another demon. Their blood vessels were still weak. It is impossible to show even a little strength until you are completely comfortable with the body you have received. However, even so, Janhei was confident that now the advantage was on his side. The battle of equal opponents in Dungeon F was one of the greatest in many years. Exchanging blows, the line became more and more visible. They were at the same level of strength now. It would be difficult to get used to and react accordingly right away, but even so, the heavenly demon did not plan to lose. If the young man could materialize only one sword, then Janhei could create an endless supply of blades without any problems. He was confident in his abilities, so he continued to advance over and over again, not paying attention to the bloody block. The battle was quite severe. The main character at this point was already dead twice. Gradually moving towards the limit, each side used all techniques to the maximum. But even so, the Celestial gradually began to earn additional points, pushing back the enemy. Everything was going great until the bloody demon played the hidden trump card from his hand. However, this only slightly surprised Janhei. In the end, he did not receive any damage from this attack. The blood demon was amazed. The strongest person in Merim actually adapted quickly. The main villain noted that defeating the heavenly demon would be quite an interesting task. Promising to kill the enemy immediately, Janhei planned to launch an attack, but the enemy was against it. Their great duel would not have to end in such a place, which means they would have to meet again later. True, this upset the heavenly demon a little, because he is trying here and his opponent is thinking about symbolism. The level of the heavenly demon has always been higher, so the goal of the red demon has not changed from years ago to now. He is obliged to crush Janhei. This has long been his goal, task, and meaning of life. Perhaps you can even call it a hobby. Blood Demon proposed to make the whole world their big stage, after all. They are the two most powerful here. But since the White Demon did not strongly support this idea, his opponent decided to temporarily retreat. The enemy was gradually moving away, but the protagonist's body was not yet ready for a fight at such distances. As the Bloody One said, the main character needs to become strong enough to withstand something like this. The Supreme Being was interested in whether there was any limit to development in this body. Perhaps it was better than the original. Suddenly, Sioho's body began to experience severe pain. It was so sharp and sudden that it took her breath away. After some time, they were transported back to the corridor of the floor. It seems that everyone remained unharmed, except for the leader. The main character returned, but his mentor was nowhere to be seen. The guy did not understand whether everything was over. The consciousness of the demon of heaven seems to be clouded. Perhaps now he is simply sleeping and gaining strength. In any case, the dungeon was cleared, new skills were acquired, and the body was again in the boy's hands. Now the main priority should have been acquiring new abilities and upgrading existing ones. The girl whom the guy had rescued from the possessed spirit regained consciousness. She called him. Since Seoho absorbed the evil soul fragment, it was purified and available to display memories. Suddenly, the consciousness of the main character was pushed somewhere into the distance. As if in a 3D film, he was transported to another area. These were the memories of the girl he saved. This is what happened before receiving the sin. Huddled in her room, the fan looked with fear at her mother who came into the room. The woman was terribly angry about her child's academic performance. Her main strength was writing and decision-making. Jian's mother asked how old the girl was, clutching the results of the latest test in her hand. The girl was already 20 years old, and her parents wanted to see some success. They didn't like the fact that she had no talent. Jian was punished because her other classmates showed better results. The woman often lashed out at her daughter, scolding her and forcing her to spend all her free time training and studying. The girl asked for forgiveness over and over again, after which her mother continued to demonstrate her superiority. A typical day for Jian began with a trip to school. Along the way, she often chatted with her friends. The girl tried to hide how she was treated at home, but her best friend knew everything and wanted to help somehow. The others believed that Jian wore long sleeves because of the constant cold, but the reason was different. Even on hot days when it was more than 25 degrees outside, it was impossible to meet a girl without several layers of clothing. On the way to school, they came across a strange man in red robes. They had not noticed him here before. Her friend said that this was a fairly popular shop that sold a lot of different trinkets. Suddenly, the seller turned to the girl and asked if she would like to purchase any of the goods. The mysterious man handed Jian a mirror fragment, but it did not teleport to the spawn point, but was just a talisman. The salesman's insight frightened the girl, but she certainly wouldn't have refused some extra luck. My friend really liked this cute little thing and supported the purchase. There was no choice left. Besides, there were a lot of tests to take next week. It would be nice to write them better. The final argument was the price of a few dollars. Jian asked her friend's opinion if she thought she needed a talisman. In the reflection, the girl saw an evil version of herself, who smiled menacingly back. Still, Jian decided to buy one for herself, in case she could really bring some of the miracles. Rejoicing at the purchase at such a low price, the girl had no idea what exactly would happen that same day. The seller was definitely related to the cult, or maybe he was the heir of the blood demon. An evil aura came with the talisman. It caught the seller's eye and amazed him with its beauty. There were test results to be received. Jian was very worried. Her classmates did not take these tests as seriously. The teacher asked the student to try harder. Her results were slightly better, but there was a lot of work to be done. The talisman did not help. The success was only with writing and making decisions. Like last time, the mother is unlikely to like such growth. However, when the girl talked about the talisman, she noticed something strange. Her friend did not remember that incident at all. Jian was sure that she went with this girl, so why doesn't she know what we are talking about? Perhaps the girl mixed up something because of fatigue or worries. In any case, the most difficult thing was ahead. Returning home, the girl wanted to run into the room and block the passage with furniture, but she did not have the courage to do so. Jian's mother met her right at the entrance, demanding to give her the test results. When the situation did not improve, the woman went to the father of the family and showed him the results. Having to go through a severe punishment, Jian's heart began to beat with double force. Her father took her into the room. He wanted to hear an explanation why her grades and disciplines important for hunting were so low. The girl tried to explain that she had no predisposition, but this did not bother her father much. Jian was forced to tell her what she had done wrong lately, naming each reason she received a blow. But before her father could repeat what he wanted, the talisman purchased earlier suddenly began to glow. The girl's thoughts came from the broken mirror, everything she wanted to ask someone all her life. A beautiful butterfly appeared before her eyes. It was so light, as if made of crystal. Gradually, the influence of the talisman intensified, and the principle of blood cult began to creep into Jian's head. The evil version of the girl, as if Kara had taken control of the girl. Now she was just a spectator from the depths. Soon everything ended forever for her family. Seeing this, the guy could not remain neutral. While everyone was arguing, the young man stood behind and thought about what move he should take next. It was obvious that the bloody demon had orchestrated everything, but how much control did he have over the entire process? Meanwhile, the office was again uneasy, another incident, but in a low-level dungeon. Now their department will be reprimanded for failing to provide sufficient protection for students. That same guy was very angry because he had taken his position with such difficulty, he had a huge amount of work ahead of him. His partner had already taken care of everything and obtained the information that the boss wanted. However, there was only one thing that greatly surprised the guys. Seo-ho was again involved in the incident. Such coincidences simply do not happen. The young man could not have ended up in the same places as the monsters. This guy definitely knew something. That's what the office thought. There was no point in waiting for new incidents. The boss planned to start his own investigation and asked his good colleague to help him with this. When the boss entered this state, refusing him was tantamount to death, so the man could only accept additional tasks. In Dungeon F, the study of the incident continued. Jian would get a lot of trouble because she was the one who was possessed. The detective didn't believe that someone could just go crazy. There was definitely a reason for this. First of all, the woman planned to punish the girl for attacking civilians, after which an investigation would be conducted. However, the main character decided to intervene in the process, understanding what exactly happened. Hearing that the hunter only had a B rank, the brunette relaxed and ordered him to move away. The detective continued to accuse Jian, but Seo-ho politely asked her to stop talking nonsense. The exchange between the two was more like a duel than a conversation. The guy considered Jian a victim of circumstances, and the detective defended an alternative point of view, which implied that the girl was a criminal. Before the dispute moved to another level, the director of that same office intervened. His name was Kim Si-woo, a young man with a menacing aura, a sluggish face, and suspicions that he was a relative of L. Si-woo shooed the detective away, saying that he would resolve the matter on his own. The higher authorities entrusted the girl to figure it out, and she tried to explain it. However, the guy's aura spoke more than 1,000 words. He gave an official order to leave the crime scene. As soon as the woman realized how inferior she was, her trace disappeared almost immediately. A difficult conversation lay ahead because in addition to the culprit, who could be a victim, there was also a suspect. Kim Si-woo recognized the main character. He said that they had not seen each other for a very long time, although he was not particularly happy about the meeting. In turn, Seo-ho was interested in why the director came here, whether this meant that he had sorted out his paperwork. The guy decided to show what his new place of work was, so he boasted that he was now the director of the association. Just in case, the main character decided to clarify whether he needed to praise the guy for such an impressive achievement. He couldn't wait to listen to the main character's interesting story, so he decided to call him aside. Seo-ho had no desire. Then the director decided to reveal the truth. He guessed that the guy was somehow connected with the monster. This surprised the young man a little, but he hardly succumbed to this aura, although a frank conversation probably could not be avoided. Before agreeing, the main character demanded to see evidence. Kim Si-woo wanted to force the young man to go with him using the power of his mana, but now the young man had an answer to this. This greatly surprised the director, because this method always had an influence on Seo-ho. Then the boss decided to use logic to prove the seriousness of his suspicions. There were few options, and it was also necessary to get Jian out of this problematic situation. Having accepted the guy's conditions, Kim Si-woo led him along so that no one could hear the information. The director's subordinate brought coffee to the main character and his boss. They wanted to create a friendly atmosphere. The main character decided to find out how much this arbiter of justice knows. It was only known about monsters that steal mana, although this monster looks different from the description. The guy was interrogated because he was involved in 2 incidents with new problematic opponents at once. Seo-ho understood the association's position. There were few facts, so their conclusions were mainly based on logic. Moreover, Kim Si-woo's rank was S, and the young man felt great under the influence of such powerful mana. So much time has passed, but the director, just as he disappointed the guy before, continues to do so to this day. Seo-ho then asked the guy if he had thought about how much stronger the main character is if he can withstand S-rank power. The boy's power filled the room in an instant, incredibly frightening the guys from the association. It only took Kim Si-woo a moment to realize how much stronger Seo-ho was. It was a stunning difference. The main character decided to clarify a couple of points, since he was taken to such a secluded place. If he did not cooperate, he would be removed. The act is logical and dishonest, but they imagine too much about their strength, forgetting what real danger is. Since the guys decided to act so desperately, then apparently they are ready for the same thing that they plan to do themselves. The young man's awakening gave him access to many skills that could be applied in everyday life. The suppressive gaze skill made it possible to have a significant influence on a person simply by making eye contact. Several years ago, the current director and Seo-ho met in the finals of the tournament. There was no clear favorite among them. The head of the Death Moon Guild bet on Kim Si-woo to win, and they immediately laid eyes on him. The HR director of another guild also took notice of the promising young man. Even though Kang Hong-jun and Han Jin-hyun were rivals in the guild, they knew how to find a common language. Even then, Kim Si-woo managed to become a hunter of the highest class. It looked promising. He was famous enough, an unlikely outcome, that only 2 guilds took notice of him. The chance to get the young star remained while he had not yet signed a contract with anyone. The fight was about to begin, even though Seo Ho showed himself to be excellent during his studies, but his potential was lower. The battle is in 5 seconds, that's how this tournament was. After the countdown, the severe fight began. The fight was even. The guys stood out for their composure and prudence. They always acted slowly. Jin Seo Ho was a mystery to many. No one knew about his family or other achievements. Kim Si-woo planned to finish the round in a second. He was confident that his strength would be enough for this. However, the absolute mode was suddenly activated. Seo Ho's eyes were like the head of the Gorgon Medusa and made him stop. The attack abruptly turned into a retreat. Few people understood what exactly happened in the ring. There was no emotion on the protagonist's face, and the danger emanating from him only grew. A few moments later, the entire initiative was in the hands of a man who, according to the audience, would be an outsider. No one could believe what was happening. The guilds and their HR managers began to fuss. However, Kim Si-woo did not plan to give up so easily. He asked who Seo Ho really was. The future director tried to understand where this guy came from, but he was not worthy of an answer. This behavior greatly angered S-Rank, and he wanted to teach his opponent a lesson, although the battle was not easy for him. The guy tried to hurt Seo Ho's feelings, and when he succeeded, he quickly regretted his strategy. All that Kim Si-woo saw was the crushing superiority of the protagonist. His blows only became more accurate. Seeing how his opponent was behaving, Seo Ho stopped holding back and let out all his rage. A couple of moments later, the battle ended with the loss of the future boss. Everything happened so quickly that he did not understand anything. Looking up, the young man saw the look that he sees in his nightmares to this day. However, this time the effect was even stronger. It was the same feeling as last time. A colleague asked Kim Si-woo to resolve the conflict as soon as possible, otherwise everything might not end so well. The guy's character changed. He didn't want to make a scandal out of such a small thing, but he did it anyway. In addition, his head hurt terribly, as if he had been watching all the parts of Harry Potter all night before the new year. Suddenly, his mentor appeared next to the guy, finally freed from sleep. The boss couldn't come to his senses because of the guy's overwhelming superiority and new abilities. The young man believed that it was Jianhei who controlled him, but the heavenly demon had nothing to do with it. It's just that at that moment the main character did not suppress his nature, so the blame lies entirely with Seo Ho. Initially, the white demon was worried, but it seems that the guy is definitely his heir. In addition, they not only have a similar character, but the main character also has talent, albeit not as cool. At the moment of his dominance, the young man wanted to inflict a crushing defeat on the enemy, without worrying about the consequences. Now any impulsive desire can result in someone annoying getting seriously hurt. Kim Si-woo told Seo Ho to get his sword. His colleague tried to reason with the boss, but he didn't care about the words. The director was afraid that if he did nothing, everything would end the same as last time. Even after thinking again, the director decided not to take back his words, continuing to insist on a duel. The guy was sure that this time he would definitely not lose to the main character. He would even die, but he would win. Kim Si-woo's condition was so fanatical that his colleague had to bring him to his senses. Realizing the difference, the director came to one simple but such a cruel conclusion. Now he doesn't have a chance. To rectify the situation, Kim Si-woo decided to ask his guest for forgiveness. He was too worried. The guy didn't care whether the association was watching him or its director personally. He wanted to leave as soon as possible. If the brunette forgot about the strength of the guy and the girl who was considered the culprit, it would speed up their conversation. In addition, the connection between the main character and those monsters is still under investigation. At the moment, Kim Si-woo will not ask the guy the secrets of strength and the reasons for going to the dungeons. However, someday he will have to tell about everything, although Seo Ho was surprised that they did not want to arrest him. When asked if the main character spared his life, Seo Ho answered in the affirmative. The boss told Hyun-suk that he would take all the blame for the incident. The main character asked if he could go, but before that, Kim Si-woo promised that next time it would be different. An S-rank's strong determination to become stronger should have helped him reach the same peak. The director's strength was obvious, but even with such capabilities, he says that this is not enough for him. But hearing something like this from a person who was so assiduously hiding his true power was a little strange. Unfortunately or fortunately, the guys have yet to meet again one way or another. The conversation is definitely over now. Hyun-suk couldn't believe how strong Seo Ho was. Everyone thought he was a weakling, but the director realized that he was now back. Either from fear or from joy, Kim Si-woo's face changed at the thought of the return of old Seo Ho. The main character decided to support Ji-an. They began to walk sometimes. He tried to keep an eye on her. The girl left the academy, seeing the other side. She realized that being a hunter was not for her. However, Seo Ho was somehow not sure that Ji-an really wanted to give up this goal. It's so easy to give up on a dream. Is this really what the girl originally wanted? It seems that the main character got to know his friend well in such a short time. She did not want to leave. She was ready to try further, but unlike Seo Ho, she only ruins other people. But the young man expressed his doubts about whether bad people could become hunters. Even over time, people will not stop spreading gossip and using foul language about the girl. Probably now she faces a fate no easier than the one that faced her before meeting that shopkeeper. Jian understood all this better than anyone else, but the guy asked her not to rush to conclusions. But even if things are like this now, this is not a reason to give up on your dream. Guts didn't give up and she shouldn't. These words really helped Jian. It was difficult for her to move forward now because she has no one else. The girl did not expect to be happy because she had done so much harm to other people. But that's not what the guy was trying to convey. It's impossible to prevent what happened, but it's better to cover it up with something better. Before leaving, the guy told his friend that if she wanted to become a hunter, she still had a chance. The guy changed the fate of Jian. Probably if he weren't around, the light in the girl's life would disappear completely. And it bore fruit. The one who had previously sold the girl a talisman noticed that the first attempt failed. The events of the story take us to a place we have never seen before. The priest stood near the saint's coffin. Many came to say goodbye to her because it was a terrible loss. The man's name was Raymond, and he could not hold back his tears, realizing that now the saint would forever endure pain inside these walls. The sounds coming from the coffin inspired the man. He turned to the people asking if they had heard it. The beautiful voice of the saint. The villagers responded in unison, their eyes filled with red and tears flowing down their cheeks. Raymond wanted to see for himself and show others the miracle that the saint was about to perform for them. Using the rod, the man hit the top cover with the back of it from all over Sita. As soon as the staff was in the center of the slab, cracks began to spread along all edges of the structure. Rejoicing at what the man was able to see, he greeted the saint who had returned to them. The girl's body was pierced, but this did not stop the girl from standing with a calm face. As soon as she took out the rod in her stomach, her body began to heal. Her subjects began to bow. Followers and Raymond himself called what happened the second coming of God to earth. The girl's real name was Baekyu Young, and it looks like the performance worked as intended. Raymond insisted that the girl smile, because from that day on she was proclaimed a saint. Sadness is now a more unfamiliar word for the girl, only joy, calmness, and curiosity. While everyone was rejoicing at the arrival of the saint, Father Raymond stopped smiling and his attention turned to the distance. Behind one of the columns stood a suspicious man, as if he had escaped from a novel about vampires and Bella. Meanwhile, the main character has not forgotten about the promise he made to himself earlier. He must become stronger. His faithful partner Janhu helped in his training, and they trained together to defeat the bloody demon. Mastery of the sword and the heavenly demon style was what was needed for the guy, given the speed of his training. Watching the skill of the white demon, the strongest in Murim, the guy did not understand how he controlled swords without touching. This is definitely a cheat ability, and Seoho definitely wants to learn it. In turn, Janhu was pleased that he could gloat over his student. An ordinary person would hardly be able to touch the heavenly demon, but the protagonist's attempts are worthy of respect. No matter how many attacks the guy made, he couldn't gain enough time to advance. And as soon as he was distracted for a moment, the mentor knocked the blade out of his hands in no time. The training time was up, and so was Soho's strength. He asked his teacher for a short break. Janhu called the guy a weakling, but he suggested that the white demon was simply too strong for him now. However, even though it was not possible to touch the master during training, Soho liked to spend time like this. Originally, Janhu did not plan to interfere, but the best they can do now is to hide and study. The main character was too weak to explore the dungeons, especially after meeting the bloody demon. Although concentrating energy is not bad, the main problem was its effective use. At that time, the guy's strength was barely enough to hold Janhu's soul for a few minutes. It was completely impossible to transfer the body. Impossible, at least for now. At the same moment, a message was received on the phone of the chief hero. Seeing him, the main character was very surprised, followed by his mentor. Kim Si-woo sent the guy a photo from the crime scene. The monster absorbing mana left another dead man. The association director continued to try to get help or advice from the protagonist. The main character couldn't stay out of the case when something so serious was happening. With the help of the sword, Soho cut a way out into the real world, which greatly shocked Janhu. This damn student surprises his ancestor so often that I'm already tired of mentioning it. Even if they were not delighted with the cooperation, in some ways the two of them were behind what was happening. A crowd of onlookers and reporters were already there, and an association official tried to hold them back. People wanted to know the truth, and at that moment the main character had just gotten to the place by taxi. Sometimes connections with an association are useful. Seoho wasn't sure, but he already had some guesses. While everyone was interrupting the work, Kim Si-woo and Soho walked inside, pushing aside the disturbing crowd. The association employee was worried that weak hunters would be sent to them, but now everything is definitely fine. The man was interested in the director's companion. He introduced the guy as a temporary assistant for the bodies of the mana stealers. The boss decided to clarify the condition of the found body, then the employee explained the situation. The body became like a tangerine, not a drop of moisture or mana in the body as in other cases. But judging by what we had to deal with before, this case is a little different. Then turning to his assistant, the director expected to hear some more detailed opinion. Only one fact was obvious: the bloody demon, or more precisely one of his techniques, had worked on him. The energy core in the center of the body was destroyed. The man was unable to resist the technique, which led to death. The main character supported the version of the director of the association. This was not a completely standard case. They planned to start a joint investigation, so Kim Si-woo gave some recommendations to the guy. From the very beginning, investigators decided to check the surrounding area and also interview witnesses. The key task was to find information on this case, as well as any data that would help in other incidents. The first figure was the wife of the deceased. Any data could help find clues, but everything was fine. The only thing is that the man joined some kind of sect. At the beginning, it looked like an ordinary church. But after that, he began to linger often, and then disappeared completely for several days. All investigations are carried out in a similar way. No one heard anything, no one knows. Everything was as always. The only clue is religion. It was definitely connected, so the association has already begun an investigation. The only problem was that no matter which way people dug, they couldn't find even one root. No mentions, testimony, participants, chapters, or anything else, as if it does not exist. However, after hearing all this, Seo-ho realized that he would most likely be able to shed light on this case as Detective Komunohashi. The guys were happy to cooperate, but simple promises were not enough for them. They wanted specifics. It was very dangerous to persecute organizations, especially religious ones, so Seo-ho himself wanted to take on this. The employee asked what organization the main character was from, if he was doing business with the director himself. Then Kim Si-woo said that previously they were rivals, then colleagues, and now everything is somehow complicated. Once upon a time, the two of them took part in one cruel case. Then the director's dear man died. There was no way to save him, but Kim Si-woo couldn't leave his body and leave. He hoped to the last. When the main character approached him and advised him to give up, it was already too late to do anything. On one of the streets, several people talked about salvation that everyone could find for themselves. A young man we didn't know was stopped on the street and asked to look at the leaflet. He didn't immediately understand what exactly they had given him, but as soon as he started reading, everything began to change. Faith said that miracles do not come to those who ask. Happiness can only be achieved by solving problems. The Church of Salvation, the largest corporation in the country, can help solve your problems. Father Raymond turned to the saint, asking her to listen carefully to the prayers of those who believe in her. The girl's attitude towards the service was negative. Her reaction gave it away, but she continued to follow this path. The man wanted the saint to say something that she had to remember. It was important, even very important. It was all about saving the world, that's what the blonde said, but it was the wrong text. Everything was for the sake of saving the whole world. Only after pronouncing it correctly, Raymond stopped looking like an Akuma. The association employee understood that the matters between the director and his friend were quite serious, and it was better not to get involved in them. It was obvious that what they were facing today was just the beginning, especially if religion turned out to be the source of the problem. What was happening reminded the guys of those days that they would prefer not to remember. The director was interested in exactly how the main character plans to find the Church of Salvation. But in order not to reveal his cards, Seo-ho said that he has a special skill for such matters. Even if the guy hasn't let you down before, I would like to have confirmation of my words. It was clear that the young man did not plan to tell others about his abilities. Then the main character asked to give him 2 days. It would take him exactly that long to find this sect. Everyone was greatly amazed by such speed. The boy was warned that if something goes wrong, all the blame will be on him. If he is happy with it, then he is in business. However, the only one who could find this church is Seo-ho, because in this world, besides the mentor, only he knows about the bloody demon. Doubts about the guy only intensified. Then the main character accepted the offer. More importantly, Seo-ho doubted that the director could convince the top management of his liquidity. The guy got involved unexpectedly, and his reputation is not very good, but the brunette took everything upon himself. But in order for everything to succeed, the main character must meet the 2 days allotted to him. The employee continued to doubt, looking after the main character as he left on his search. But Kim Si-woo explained that they could not find even one lead, even after involving all the people. And this guy is confident that 2 days will be enough for him to complete this task. The director was thinking about why he decided to ask this man for help in the first place. The mentor was interested in why the guy was so eager to make serious enemies like the director. Their confrontation may be a fun sandbox game for the Supreme Being, but Kim Si-woo's eyes exuded power. Oppressive, even in some ways, murderous aura emanating straight from the depths of his gaze. The heavenly demon warned the guy that if he failed, the director would probably try to kill him. However, the main character himself understood this very well, so the mentor's reaction was a little unusual. He didn't understand why Seo-ho decided to help if he was in great danger. Junhei also wondered why people who should be grateful to Sohuo acted so arrogantly. But the young man eloquently explained to his mentor that he did not like this conversation. Then the white demon got into the situation. Everyone has their own circumstances, so he just flew on. Even though the guy promised to find it in 2 days, Seoho himself can hardly do it even in a week. The guy hoped that the mentor would help him. Then the spirit asked why the young man had such a thought. Afterwards, the guy offered a lucrative deal. He would allow him to control his body for a while. The way the main character conducted business, the heavenly demon liked it more and more. Hearing the proposal corresponding to the main law of alchemy, namely equivalence, Junhei agreed. The mentor warned the guy that not everything happens the way the guy wants it. Therefore, sooner or later, the one who becomes the strongest of them will simply get rid of his opponent. She and Seoho are like horse and rider. If someone relaxes too much, positions will quickly change. Returning to the body, the team wanted to pull the same trick they did in F's dungeon. Using his power, the main character planned to look into the memory of the deceased to find out information. Everything worked out. All that remained was to launch the skill before the guy received the necessary data. The first thing the young man saw was the man himself. He had problems at work and was actively trying to solve them. He did not want to be fired, but it was not possible to correct the situation in a timely manner. Then a stranger came to him. The same father from the church came to him and asked what problems were tormenting the man. Reynold was the manager of a shell company, so the man knew who he was. However, without trying to answer the questions, Father Reynold put his hand on the hard worker's shoulder and asked him to believe in their church. They promised that they would help overcome any problems that their followers encountered along the way. This was exactly the information that the investigation department was looking for, but it was still too little. Next came memories of a quarrel with his wife. She was often worried, and this angered the man. He repeated many times that he was fine, but his exhausted appearance from work said otherwise. Having become a follower of the Church of Salvation, the man finally saw the first miracle in his life. The main character could not believe his eyes. He saw the saint of this church, and it was someone he knew well. The beauty in front of him simply could not be here. It was Yang.